Hello everybody, it is an international break tradition. It is time for Championship Managers Ranked. We are going to rank every manager working in the EFL Championship right now on what they have done in the Championship and what they are doing in the Championship right now in their positions as permanent managers of a Championship club. Get involved down there in the comments, guys. We get some really wild ones on this. I think because it's completely subjective, it does derange a little bit. I am trying to be completely logical. I try my best. So, look, if you're over here completely emotional, we need to at least try and meet somewhere in the grey area. I'll accept your position if you accept mine. So give me your views in the comments. Keep calm. Don't lose it. It's all right. I just want to give you the list here I've written down since the start of 24-25, before we get into the rankings. When we did this, these names were in jobs, and they are no longer in those jobs. Robbins, Corberan, Eustace, Harris, Lowe, Williams, Buckingham, Volta, Schumacher, Pellack, Balut, Warren, and Edwards. That is 13 managers have left roles. You'll notice some of those managers have left roles and gone to new roles in the Championship. The bottom 7 currently of the EFL Championship have all changed managers. Stoke, twice. I've got to say, guys, this one I found quite hard because we're at the time of the season where you can see there's been so many firings that anyone who was doing a kind of terrible job is now not in the job anymore. And also, spoiler alert, the return of Tony Mowbray is unhelpful. That's a very experienced manager with a promotion on his CV that obviously has to slot in somewhere. So there may be some people who have been moved down slightly unfairly just because of the return of Mogger. Are you ready for this? Let's start at the bottom. I've got an open goal to start with. 24th, Swansea. Swansea don't have a manager. We always go vacant in 24th, which helps me out nicely. I'm not going to do Alan Sheehan as interim, and it means I don't have to have... Well, I can have fewer tiers, put it that way, because I don't have to put anyone bottom. Let's move straight on to 23. Matt Bloomfield, Luton. That might seem a bit stiff, because if you look up there, you'll see I had Bloomfield in 20th when he came in. I'm not going to judge him on anything at Colchester and Wickham. Only the Championship. And I've got to say it's under par so far. I know it's a difficult job that he's gone into, and it might change in the future, but I can only talk about what he's done and what he's doing. And there's an argument Luton actually got worse when he went in. That may turn again, but if they get relegated, that is a big fail to begin with for Matt Bloomfield at Luton. He's got to get them above the line. They are 4 points off it with... They were in the Premier League last year, so with arguably a squad that should be able to do much better. Small sample size, but not great from Bloomfield so far. Which means I've been able to slide Miron Mujlik up a place. I had him in 23rd last time. I looked at the numbers. He has actually improved Plymouth. I think they were 24th under Rooney, or when he arrived, rather. And they've been 20th since. The only issue with that is there's a bit of a high tide going on at the bottom of the table, and that hasn't actually transpired into them looking like they're going to get out of trouble. They're probably going to go down. So it's kind of small mercies for Mujlik, but because I've put Bloomfield down, I can put Mujlik up a spot. 21st, that's a kind of similar reason why Omar Ritza has gone up one. It is precarious. Look, Cardiff had an atrocious start. I think they had 1 point when Ritza came in. So they're actually 17th under his watch, but they are in danger. Eustace has got something going at Derby over the past 3 games. As I said, Luton have got a nice looking squad underneath them, and Cardiff have sat there precariously 1 place above. So it could still not work out great, but if he trots out 17 for the duration of his employment, he might just be very unlucky and be in the wrong place at the wrong time. You wouldn't say terrible job, but he's got to keep them in the division. Right, that one's going to seem really harsh. Johannes Hoth Torup, 20th I've gone for. And if you look when he came in, because he'd never done anything and we didn't know who he was in terms of the Championship, we had him there. I did bump him up a few places. And do you know what my thought was going to be? Was that, well, Norwich will keep being either in in the playoffs, maybe like in sixth or just on the edge with a chance of getting in there. But they're not. They're 13th and they are actually 8 points off with 8 games to go. So probability says Norwich ain't getting in the playoffs or promoted this season, which is kind of par for Norwich. I know people will talk about transition seasons and I get that. I'll also refer you back to what I said at the start of the video, where we're at the point now where people who have done particularly bad jobs are not in those jobs anymore. And I'm ranking the people who are here right now, and arguably, is it the biggest managerial underachievement for Norwich to be 13th? I don't know. Maybe Luton we can factor in, but there's obviously far fewer games for Bloomfield. You tell me, but it seems a bit harsh to have him on in 20th on the surface of it, but who's he done better than is my argument. And he's got Sainz, and he's got Sargent, and he's got Nunes, and Norwich tend to be very good in the Championship. So, yeah, I put everybody on a ladder, and that's where he came out. Get your thoughts in, Norwich fans. 19th, Sellers, and this doesn't help Tor up because I had Sellers 21st in January, and yeah, really, really good since he's been in at Hull. They have been 10th. I think it was like, I didn't count, it was December the 6th or something, and then he didn't do the first game, and I've counted since then, been the 10th best team in the Championship. And also, look at one-off tactical stuff. He's gone away to Sheffield United and won, and he's gone away to Sunderland and won. So, and that's a good comparison to Matt Bloomfield, who, you know, is coming into a bad situation with, we think, a good squad. And Sellers has done what the Luton fans would have wanted Bloomfield to do. So Sellers has, I'm quite high on him. He's gone up 2 places and he'll continue to go up as we get a bigger sample size, only 19 games so far. John Mousinho, some people will say, oh, he's not the 18th best manager in the Championship. That's not what we're doing. It's a ranking based on what all the managers have done and what they are doing right now. And I accept the argument, Mousinho can't really do a lot more than he's doing at the moment. So the only thing really against him is time, and that there are other people who've had playoff finishes, and we've got 8 promotions coming up from the top 10 of this video as well. So Mousinho, huge tick, brilliant, couldn't really do much more, and he'll build his way up our list the longer he stays in the Championship and the more he achieves. But excellent. Maybe my system works against him a little bit. 17th, I don't know whether I've got Big Val a bit low there because he's confusing, okay? So if we judge him at Barnsley, incredible, outstanding, right at the top. Barnsley in 5th in the playoffs, unbelievable. Then he jumps ship, goes to West Brom. They weren't actually doing that badly, but he does seem to get fired from jobs, Big Val, doesn't he? Then he goes to Watford, and again, I didn't think they were doing terribly, and it's Watford as well, but, quote, he does seem to get fired from jobs. He's in at Blackburn with a terrible start, 1 point in 4, which is kind of colouring my view a little bit. So I've dropped him in at 17th. We'll see how he does. There's a big ceiling and a big floor. He could go anywhere. If it's anything like Barnsley, he'll shoot right up there. But problem is, Eustace had Blackburn in, I think, a kind of, can't say false position, but really punching to the peak of their powers, given the kind of chaos we associate with Venky's and Blackburn. So it's going to be it's a high bar to attain to, and we'll leave Val there in 17th and see if we can move him at the end of the season. It will be now. 16th, Tom Cleverley. Now, people get very cross about this one as well, and I do think for managers who are young and new, who are working at complicated clubs, my system isn't necessarily great, because I'm like, what have you done and what are you doing? And for Cleverley, what have you done? Well, it's his first season as a manager, so what have you done? Nothing, only this. And 10th with Watford, 15th last season, pretty good. Keeping your job is pretty good, and it looks like he's going to last the season. What are you doing? Yeah, it's fine. Could he do much more? No, probably. And then again, like I said about John Mousinho, then it's just time, and there's other people who have done more in the Championship. So I hope you can understand, Watford fans, that on the one hand, yeah, Tom Cleverley couldn't do a lot more. He is doing a good job, but just in the hierarchy at the moment, I value past achievements, and he doesn't have any. And if he keeps working as well as he is this year, he'll get some. All makes sense. There we go. Maybe that gets some tears out of the comments. 15th, Marty Cifuentes, who, look, I was very high on at the start of the season. Up there, I had him in 10th after a great escape with QPR. Then, am I right to call Marty streaky now? Because, it was a one-way streak when he came in last season. Up there in a brilliant survival effort. And then they were really bad, weren't they? Into the middle of this season. Then they started performing like they did last season, and now they're kind of like really bad again. So I'm softening a bit on Cifuentes. I can't judge it purely on him being brilliant last season, and just a bit erratic this season. QPR currently 15th, and he's got a countenance then being on the beach for the rest of the season and get some more results and try and. We expect him to be right in the middle, didn't we? But there you go. You give me your thoughts in the comments. 14th, Liam Manning. This is growing very, very nicely now for Manning, who came in, I think, November last season. Finished 11th with them. So, again, there's probably an element that Manning's a little bit penalised by only having been in the division for 18 months. Bristol City is 7th at the moment, which is really good. And you talk about people performing at the peak of what else could they do. Manning's probably up there. So I'm trying to just push him up gently. There'll be more changes in the summer. And look, if he's 7th, he's going to be right in the middle of this list. If he finishes in the playoffs, I am bumping him right up. So yeah, maybe a little bit of a victim of the what have you done, because what he's doing is very, very nice. And there you go. We'll get some completely outraged comments from Sheffield Wednesday fans because they won't understand what I'm doing here. What have you done? What are you doing? And I've got to rank the list of managers currently managing. Danny Rowell's doing an excellent job at Sheffield Wednesday. And again, I do think my list or my style of doing this with the what have you done, because if it was what are you doing, in fact, if it was potential, because there's a big call that Danny Rowell's going to end up Southampton manager next season, and you'd think he's going to be potentially in the Premier League if that is the case and he has a good season there. If it was potential, Danny Rowell would be right at the top. Some would argue, well, Ben, you've got to factor in that working for Mr. Chansiri isn't easy. I've tried my best to do that. Brilliant last season. He's got them in 12th at the moment, which may be a peak, but again, we are about to talk about a top 10 with 8 promotions between them, various playoff finishes as well, and maybe Danny Rowell and the likes of Tom Cleverley haven't had the opportunity to do that. Believe me, this guy, his time will come. So understand, Wednesday fans, what I'm doing. I am not saying you would rather have 12 other managers or he is the 13th best manager. It's just the way I do my rankings. But I like him a lot and he'll go far, put it that way. Gary Rowett. So here's an example of where your legacy and your longevity, and particularly Rowett's in-game capacity to not lose games and move the chess pieces about works for him. Look, if that new manager bounce had kept going, he'd be right up there. But I've obviously got to bank a playoff finish for Gary Rowett for Darby. Okay, not great for Stoke, but really good for Millwall for a number of years, having them up in the top 10, which is why the likes of Roll and Cleverley end up lower down, because you've got people like Rowett who have just managed hundreds of games in the Championship. And whether you do or not, I respect that. Bit of a slip at the moment for Rowett, and he wouldn't like to have, I'm going to say, a relegation. Some might say another relegation, because he did come in for the last, how many games was it at Birmingham last year? And got caught out quite badly, and they went down. I'm not entirely going to blame him for a season where Birmingham had 4 managers, but Oxford currently 4 points above the drop zone. They're going to need what I'm deeming a manager who's good at tweaking and, eking out draws from games where maybe other managers would have lost. 11th, look, I stuffed Frank Lampard right in the middle at 13. And let's just get this out the way. I talk about wild comments on ranking videos and manager ranking videos. Well, factor in the complete delusion that football fans have about world-class players who then become managers. People find it really tough to process Wayne Rooney in the Championship, or Steven Gerrard struggling at Aston Villa, or Frank Lampard indeed being at the bottom of the Premier League when he spent his whole career at the top. Try and work through that however you can. It's a difficult one to get your head around, but we do get some mental comments about particularly players from the golden generation who have gone into management. So I shoved him in at 13th. I've got a lot of respect for what he did at Derby, actually, Lampard. I know it was the Mel Morris era and they were still throwing a bit of cash at it, but that was a hell of a season, 18-19. And to finish 6th and get to the playoff final against, when you look at what Aston Villa had at their disposal and Bielsa to beat him in the playoffs as well, couldn't have done a hell of a lot more. I think playoff final losing is about as good as it could have got for Derby that season. And he's on an incredible run of 10 wins in 12 at the moment. And you tell me, there was someone in the comments, how many managers in this list have been able to do a streak of that kind anywhere in their career, let alone in the Championship? So I've got to bump him up a couple of places. We'll stick him in at 11, but I'm sure the delusion will continue. We'll get some crazy comments about Lampard, but that's where I think he should go. Right, as I said, we're now going into the top 10 where we have 8 promotions between these top 10. Yes, it's a bit top-loaded with certain managers who we're going to get onto right at the top of the list, but Alex Neil is one of them who's promoted with Norwich back in 15, 16, 16, 17, can't remember the exact year. And I think he generally does a good job in the Championship. He was at Preston, keeping them down in the middle. He's been 8th since his arrival as well at Millwall. Stoke, we can give people a pass at Stoke. Seems the impossible job over the past few years. So I like what he's done and I like what he's doing. So he's in the top 10. And again, to people who are struggling to understand maybe a John Mousinho or a Danny Roll or a Tom Cleverley where they are, you're now up against people who have hundreds of games and now there's promotions coming. And Alex Neil took Norwich up and I respect that. In 9th, I've got John Eustace. You're going to see a few people dropping places now. And elephant in the room, it is because of Tony Mowbray coming back in. I have to slot him in. And as you can see by this video, I countenance a lot on what have you done, promotions and experience, etc. But Eustace, I mean, adversity and steadiness, I've written down on my notes down there. He does seem to get himself into some pretty tricky looking jobs, and the situation with Birmingham was pretty horrible, but he did really well, didn't he? You know, the first season he kept them in there and they did the takeover and then they removed him and they were doing well up until then. I'm sure some Blackburn fans won't like that he's chosen to move from one club to the other, but I don't know the minutiae of what he was promised or what he promised or what's going on behind the scenes there at Blackburn, but they were doing very well. And by God, if he keeps Derby in this division, with the sort of injuries they've got and the fact that they were a League One side last season and, you know, what's going on down the bottom there and a potential high tide, I'm putting him up even higher because on the what have you done and what are you doing, it's all very, very good, isn't it, when it comes to John Eustace. In 8th, again, I've dropped Paul Heckingbottom down a place. Preston are 14th. Let's be fair. He's pretty much been there the entire season, hasn't he, Heck? Because Ryan Lowe went out after one game. But still, he had no pre-season. He didn't know he was going to be doing the job. And we like Preston as a mid-table team. There's always been rumours, you know, at the start of every season, this will be the season. This will be the one where Preston bottom out and don't finish in the middle. But no signs of that. He's doing a good job. And again, he has a promotion on his CV. Took Sheffield United to 2nd. So in terms of the what are you doing and what have you done, I've got to have Heckingbottom ranking quite highly, and you know the reason why I've knocked him down one place. Right. Am I falling out of love with Michael Carrick? I know a lot of the Borough fans are falling out of love with Michael Carrick. Is the bloom off the rose? You can see I kept having to shove him up because we had like the likes of Mark Robbins leaving the brilliant job he'd done at Coventry earlier in the season and Carlos Corberan. So by proxy, Carrick just kept rising up and people were saying, well, how can that be? And it was all based on that first season, really, with Akpom Archer, Ramsey, Giles, etc., where Middlesbrough were absolutely brilliant. You think, oh, here goes Michael Carrick. He's going to be an incredible manager. That was 2 seasons ago, wasn't it? And Borough are just really not where I think they should be at the moment. So I'm just looking 8th last season, so they missed out. And currently in the EFL Championship table, Borough are, well, they're 8th once again, and they are 3 points off the playoffs. So this can all very, very much swing. if Carrick can get them back up into the playoffs. But we've got to now start judging. Has it been that great for the past 2 seasons? No. Has it been as good as the first season? No, as well. So I'm levelling down a bit on Michael Carrick. Let me know your thoughts on that. And I'm levelling down a bit on Mark Robins. You can see from the start of the season, he was at Coventry, obviously. We had 5th, 6th, 6th. And then he was not in work. And now he's at Stoke, which, as I said earlier in the video, is the perennially sort of impossible gig, isn't it? But they're in danger. And he needs to get a tune out of them. And one thing I do think about Mark Robins, fairly similar with Michael Carrick, and of course they met in the playoffs, didn't they, Middlesbrough and Coventry that season, and he did a number on Carrick. But I don't think Mark Robins has been that great the last 2 seasons, because I know he had to rejig it with Coventry after Hamer and Gyökeres went, but good squad, and they weren't great last season, and he obviously got sacked this season, and he's struggling with Stoke. So load of credit in the bank for coming out of League One, stabilising Coventry, playing at St Andrews, moving them up, losing in the playoff final. Brilliant. But this is now trending down, I think, same as Carrick for Robins. There is Regis Lebris, who, and this is what happens, and this is kind of the argument as well for when people think that they've got a manager who's young and who's doing well, like Cleverley or like Danny Roll. Well, here's a problem for your arguments there, because Lebris is in 4th place in the table, and, you know, he doesn't have a parachute payment, and he has a young squad. I know Sunderland were up there the first season. They were promoted, but they weren't last season. He's just done a superb job. And you can see I've had to just go 21, 17, 12, 9, 6, 5 now for Lebris. The difficulty now is they look absolutely certain, nailed on to finish in 4th, don't they? Because they're 9 points behind 3rd and 10 points ahead of 5th. So what does he do in the playoffs now? God, if he wins the playoffs, that is utterly sensation. That's going to be, well, you can compare that with what Kieran McKenna did at Ipswich last season in coming straight in and bosh, but that's not going to be easy. But again, I'm going to say it. I sort of said it for Massinio and for Cleverley and for Roll. What else can they do? What else can Lebris do is caveated by the fact he's in 4th in the league as well. So he is peaking at a higher rate than those other managers. Right, in 4th, Tony Mowbray is back. I know people struggle a little bit with older managers. There's always a sense that people think that... I've mentioned Danny Roll a lot in this video. What is Danny Roll? Like 35, 36? And Tony Mowbray's in his 60s. So people struggle a little bit with older managers to value them, I think. And they'll always value a manager 30 years younger, new, shiny toy, handsome, young, vibrant, etc., against someone like Tony Mowbray, who's been around forever. But already I'm seeing it at West Brom. I can see 3, 6, 9 points in the last 5 games. They went to Burnley and had a good go at it. They're playing on the front foot. They got a draw at Leeds. We know he likes to play open attacking football as well. And then you've got to factor in promoted with West Brom. Yes, I know, over 15 years ago. Blackburn, that was a great job. Took them out of League One, and with all the Venky's chaos as well, they were punching. And God, I remember times during the COVID run with Diaz and Rothwell and Lenihan and all those guys, and go figure, none of those were managed particularly well by Venky's, because I think they were all allowed to leave for free, weren't they, at various points. But yeah, Blackburn were always up there challenging, and then Sunderland straight into the playoffs, wasn't it? So this guy's a really, really good manager, despite not being 35 and European or, you know, whatever. So I've got to drop him straight in there at 4th, and another with a promotion on his CV, which you might not value, but I do a lot. What have you done? I've been in this league before, and by God, I've got promoted out of it. Right, we're going to go to the top 3, which are blindingly obvious. And it does really feel now that with, and I'll list them in the order they are in the table, Leeds, Sheffield United and Burnley, this now purely depends on who goes up automatically or who goes up, period. All 3 of them could still go up. It is so tight between these 3 because one of these managers has 2 promotions, one of these managers has 2 titles, and one of these managers also has a promotion that was a pretty extraordinary promotion as well. So I think by the end of the season, these 3, we're honestly probably going to be judging it by who finishes higher this season. It is that tight, in my humble opinion. I've got Scott Parker third. He's currently finishing third and outside of the top two. There was a lot of chaos to clear up at Burnley. 25 undefeated, 27 clean sheets, I think it is. 78 points. He's over the 2 points per game, but he's not quite in the automatic spots. And 2 promotions before. Yes, both at parachute teams at Fulham and Bournemouth. I get it. But if he does it again, that's sensational, isn't it? 3 promotions out of the division. I just can't have him above the other 2 managers we're about to talk about. But he's doing a fine job. And I know people get deranged by Parker and his roll necks and the way he talks. But what have you done? What are you doing? All big ticks for me, especially. What have you done? In second, I'm leaving Daniel Farker there. And this is just a big head-to-head with Chris Wilder, who, go figure, is going to be first. Daniel Farker has to finish, in my humble opinion, taking into account the points deduction, he's got to finish 3 points ahead of Chris Wilder, and I'll put him at number 1. Although, a third title would be incredibly impressive, wouldn't it? You can say, what more can you do? He's top of the table. He's got 80 points from 38 games. And what I will say is, compared to Sheffield United and Burnley, that are great clubs, Leeds is just weird and ridiculous, isn't it? The intensity on you at Leeds, even fans of Blades and Burnley would admit, is just something a different level with that one club, City, and the sheer size of the fan base and how, and I mean this in the most loving way, Leeds fans, how crazy that lot are about their football. Could be a third title, which would be something pretty spectacular, won't it? Pretty, in the words of Daniel Farker, as he likes to say in his kind of broken English. So I think that's where I am with it. I'm looking got a lot of clarity after 38 rounds of Championship football. I think I'll still have Chris Wilder number 1 if Farker is not 3 points ahead of him. But then would the third title change my mind? I don't know. I'll see how I feel and how the last 8 games go. So, spoiler alert, we said it. I've got Chris Wilder at number 1. I just think, while he's level on points, and it is +2 in terms of what's actually been recorded on the pitch this season, I think Leeds have more stability than Sheffield United this season, given they were there last season. I know they had sales, but it's been a lot smoother. And I think there's a lot more of a sense at Sheffield United this season that it's the force of will of the manager that's been doing a lot of this. He's back to how he was back in 18-19, which was an extraordinary promotion. I know Farker finished a place above him that season for a potentially even more extraordinary promotion with Norwich. You tell me in the chat. But for now, with a brilliant promotion before, we can talk about finishing 9th in the Premier League, but that shouldn't be relevant to what I'm talking about in the Championship. We can talk about Middlesbrough and a cup of tea at Watford where it didn't work. But I think all things considered, with the past work and the kind of instability with the takeover and the crazy summer and all of that, I know people will say, yeah, he's got parachute payments and a very good squad. Yeah, of course he has. We get that. That's been a discussion we've been having for 8 years, okay? But my take is he is the number 1 performing manager. What have you done? What are you doing? Woof! Get in the comments. I've got to say, guys, that's the hardest one I've found to do of those. I felt like I was putting people lower than I wanted to. Ishmael, Roll, Cleverly, Musinio. Love to have them up higher. I found it hard because of, I mean, you can argue that I'm too attached to what people have done. That's fine. It's subjective, isn't it? You might be right. I might be wrong. You might be wrong. We've all got to be open and have enough humility to the possibility. So I found it tricky. Get involved in the comments. Again, it's subjective. Please meet me in the middle, though. If you're completely emotionally led about this, that you're a Watford fan, particularly, or a Sheffield Wednesday fan, I think we're going to get some crazy ones from really emotionally led fans of those teams. It's fine. I'll try and meet you in the middle. I understand people get emotional about their teams, but understand what I'm trying to do here. I'm not going particularly on potential. I'm going on what have you done and what are you doing? And maybe my system works against those types of managers, and I can have enough humility to admit that. So maybe you can try and understand that before you completely blow a bloody gasket in the comments. Anyway, I want to try and keep this under 30 minutes. I can see the clock ticking down there. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you understand my logic. I don't hate anybody. I don't hate anybody's club. I don't have an effing agenda. And let's try and get a good debate going down there right now. Thank you for watching Championship Managers Ranked.